I'm 85 years old. Even saying that feels strange. The number sounds heavier than I ever imagined it would. When you're young, age feels like something far away, a distant idea meant for other people. But one day, you wake up, look in the mirror, and realize time has quietly passed you by. People often ask me if I have regrets. They expect a dramatic answer. A failed business. A broken marriage. A mistake that ruined everything. But the truth is more uncomfortable than that. My biggest regret isn't what I did wrong. It's what I didn't do at all. When I was younger, I believed I had time. Endless time. I thought life would slow down eventually, that there would be a moment when everything made sense, when I'd finally know what mattered most. That moment never came. Instead, life kept moving. Quietly. Ruthlessly. 1 year slipping into the next without asking for permission. I spent most of my early years chasing stability. Not happiness, stability. A steady job. A respectable image. Something safe enough to quiet my fears. I told myself that once I felt secure, I'd start living. But security has a way of becoming a cage. I worked long hours not because I loved the work, but because it felt responsible. I missed dinners. I postponed trips. I delayed conversations that mattered because there was always later. Later became a habit. I remember telling myself, I'll call them tomorrow. I'll apologize when things calm down. I'll start doing what I love after this phase passes. But phases don't pass. They pile up. By the time I noticed the cost, years had already disappeared. People came and went. Some drifted away quietly. Others left with words that were never taken back. There were friendships I assumed would always be there, until one day they weren't. No fight. No closure. Just silence that grew louder with time. At 85, silence is something you understand deeply. It fills rooms. It sits beside you at night. It reminds you of every conversation you never had. One of the hardest lessons I learned is that love doesn't survive on intention alone. You don't get credit for meaning well. You only get credit for showing up, again and again, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're tired, even when pride tells you to stay quiet. I didn't always show up. I thought being present meant being physically there. I didn't realize how often my mind was somewhere else, planning, worrying, calculating the future while missing the moment unfolding in front of me. I watched people grow older without truly seeing them. I noticed wrinkles only after they had deepened. I heard stories only after it was too late to ask follow-up questions. If I could go back, I wouldn't rush through conversations. I wouldn't treat people like they were permanent fixtures in my life. Nothing is permanent. Not youth. Not strength. Not even the people you love most. That truth hits hardest when you're sitting alone with memories instead of plans. At 85, you stop thinking in years. You think in moments. You replay them, not the busy ones, but the quiet ones you overlooked. The laughter you brushed past. The chances you dismissed as ordinary. Those are the moments that matter in the end. And here's something no one told me early enough. Life doesn't punish you all at once. It collects slowly. Every postponed dream. Every avoided truth. Every, I'll do it someday. They don't hurt immediately. They wait. And one day, they arrive together. I used to believe that growing older would bring clarity. That wisdom would simply appear with time. But wisdom doesn't come from aging. It comes from paying attention. I didn't always pay attention. If you're listening to this now, and you still feel like life is ahead of you, please hear this carefully. The days feel long, but the years are short. Much shorter than you think. Don't wait for permission to live differently. Don't assume tomorrow will be more convenient than today. Because one day, you'll be 85. And you'll realize the cost of waiting. Before we continue, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? What country, what city, what quiet room are you sitting in as you hear this? Take a moment and write your location in the comments below. I read them all, and it reminds me how many lives, in so many places, are quietly listening to the same truth. Now, let me tell you what I would truly do differently. If I could go back, I wouldn't try to fix everything. That may sound strange, but when you reach my age, you realize something important. Most of life isn't broken, it's just misunderstood. I spent too many years trying to control outcomes instead of experiencing moments. I believed that if I planned carefully enough, worried hard enough, and prepared for every possibility, I could protect myself from pain. I was wrong. Pain finds you anyway. The difference is whether you lived fully before it arrived. One of the first things I would do differently is how I treated my time. I acted as if time was a resource I could manage later, like money in a savings account. I told myself I was being responsible. In reality, I was being afraid. Afraid of uncertainty. Afraid of failure. Afraid of choosing wrong. So I chose safe. Safe jobs. Safe routines. Safe versions of myself. What I didn't understand then is that safety has a hidden cost. It dulls your curiosity. It quiets your instincts. It slowly convinces you that dreaming is childish. I abandoned dreams not because they weren't important, but because they felt inconvenient. There were things I wanted to try. Skills I wanted to learn. Places I wanted to see. But I always told myself the same lie. Now is not the right time. The right time never came. Looking back, I don't regret failing at things. I regret not attempting them at all. Failure fades. The memory of never trying does not. Another thing I would change is how I handled conflict. I avoided difficult conversations. I thought silence was mature. I thought letting things slide made me the bigger person. What it actually did was build invisible walls between me and the people I loved. Resentment doesn't explode, it accumulates. Unspoken feelings don't disappear, they harden. There were moments when a single honest conversation could have changed everything. Instead, I swallowed my words and convinced myself it didn't matter. It mattered. At 85, you remember the arguments you had, but you remember the unsaid words even more clearly. I would also stop measuring my life by how productive I looked to others. I spent too much energy trying to appear busy, useful, successful. I confused motion with meaning. Some of my most important moments happened when nothing useful was being done at all. Sitting quietly with someone, listening without interrupting, noticing details I used to rush past. Presence is something you only appreciate once it's gone. I wish I had slowed down enough to notice people changing. I wish I had paid attention to how often "we should do this again" became "someday." Because someday is fragile. People age. Circumstances shift. Health changes without warning. You don't get notified when a moment is the last one. If I could go back, I would say, "I love you" more freely, not as a dramatic gesture, but as a habit. I would express gratitude before it felt urgent. I would praise people while they could still hear it. I assumed people knew how I felt. Assumptions are dangerous. Another mistake I made was postponing joy. I treated happiness like a reward for endurance. Like something you earn after suffering long enough. I told myself I would relax once things were stable, once responsibilities eased, once the pressure was gone. The pressure never left. What did leave was my ability to enjoy small things without guilt. At 85, I can tell you this with certainty, joy doesn't arrive when conditions are perfect. It arrives when you let it. I would also stop comparing my timeline to anyone else's. I wasted precious years feeling behind, feeling inadequate, feeling like I had missed some invisible deadline. Life is not a race, but it's easy to forget that when everyone around you seems to be moving faster. Comparison stole my peace more efficiently than failure ever could. If you're listening now and you feel behind, please understand this. There is no universal schedule for becoming who you are meant to be. Some people bloom early. Others bloom late. Some bloom quietly and never get applause. That doesn't make the life any less meaningful. One of the hardest truths I learned is that no one is coming to rescue you from your own life. Not time. Not luck. Not circumstances. Change happens the moment you stop waiting. I waited too long. And yet, here's something important. Regret doesn't mean life was wasted. It means lessons were expensive. Even now, at 85, I still find meaning in sharing what I learned. I still notice beauty. I still feel gratitude. But I carry the awareness of what could have been if I had chosen courage a little earlier. If I could give you one message from this stage of life, it would be this. Don't wait to become yourself. Not when you feel ready. Not when everything is stable. Not when fear quiets down. Because fear doesn't disappear, you simply learn to live larger than it. At 85, you stop asking big questions about the future. You start asking quieter ones. Did I love well? Did I listen enough? Did I spend my time on what truly mattered? These questions don't arrive with drama. They arrive in stillness, in the early mornings when the world feels far away, and in the evenings when memories sit beside you like old friends. If there is one mindset I wish I had adopted sooner, it is this: life is not something to be solved, it is something to be experienced. I treated life like a problem that needed constant fixing. I believed that once I had answers, peace would follow. But peace doesn't come from certainty. It comes from acceptance. Acceptance of imperfection. Acceptance of change. Acceptance that you will never fully arrive. Some of my happiest moments were unplanned. Unimpressive by any outside standard. Yet those are the moments my mind returns to now. A shared laugh. A quiet walk. A conversation that went longer than expected. Nothing extraordinary, and yet everything. I also learned, far too late, that people don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be present. They need honesty more than solutions. Understanding more than advice. If I could go back, I would stop trying to win arguments and start trying to understand the person in front of me. Being right fades quickly. Being kind lasts. I would also forgive faster. Not because others deserved it, but because carrying anger is exhausting. Anger ages you in ways time never could. There were years I lost not to hardship, but to holding on. At 85, you understand that forgiveness is not a gift you give others. It is a release you give yourself. Another truth I learned is that meaning doesn't come from grand achievements. It comes from alignment, from living in a way that feels honest to who you are. I chased approval for too long. I wanted to be admired, respected, remembered. What I didn't realize was that approval is a moving target. It never settles. The moment I stopped needing it, life became lighter. You don't need to be impressive to matter. You just need to be real. As my body slowed down, my awareness sharpened. I noticed things I once ignored: how precious ordinary days are, how quickly seasons pass, how fragile health can be. I used to think I would notice when the best years ended. You don't. They blend into the rest of life quietly. And one day, you realize the present moment is the only one that ever truly existed. If you are listening to this and you still have choices ahead of you, please understand this. You don't need a complete transformation. You need small, brave adjustments. Say what you feel. Do the thing you keep postponing. Spend time where your heart feels lighter. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Because life doesn't wait for clarity. It moves while you decide. At 85, I don't wish for more years. I wish for more presence in the years I had. And if there is one final thing I want you to remember, it's this. You don't reach the end of life wishing you had worked more, worried more, or played it safer. You wish you had lived more honestly. So live in a way that won't require forgiveness from your future self. And if you're still here listening, thank you. Truly. That means you're paying attention.